Good evening and welcome to the show. 2017 is coming to a close, and we all know that 2018 is election year. Elections are known as the largest peacetime logistics operation in every democratic country. To talk about what has been 2017 in the making for the Fijian Elections Office, I am joined this evening by Supervisor of Elections, Mr. Mohammed Saneem. Also joining me on the panel tonight is Rachna Lal from the Fiji Sun, who will be the co-host as we build up to the 2018 general elections. Getting right into it, what can we expect 2018 elections to be held? Or when, rather?
So the 2018 general election can be held sometime between April and November next year. The writ can be issued as early as the 6th of April, and the election can be held on the last day as 22nd of November.
Could you perhaps explain what do you mean by the term writ?
Okay, so the writ is like an instructions from His Excellency the President under the Constitution to the Electoral Commission to conduct elections. It's an order which basically it states that you are directed to conduct elections for 51 members of Parliament, and it will also give us the date when the election is supposed to take place. The writ also identifies some other markers or dates, as I would say, like when the registration of voters should close and other information as to where nominations can be filed. So that's a writ. It's a Latin word. It's a very old English also in terms of the legalese. Yes.
And what is the election process going to be like?
So basically, the process is that the Honourable Prime Minister may advise His Excellency the President to dissolve Parliament and issue the writ for a general election. And then His Excellency has, within 7 days, he has to issue the writ, announce the date for the election, and then the Electoral Commission will be handed the writ by His Excellency, and we will proceed to conducting the processes required for the election. So it starts with nominations, and then it goes to printing of ballot papers. There will be pre-poll exercise, and then we have election day itself. I think it's a good time to say that based on our preparations so far, we have reduced the number of days for pre-polling from 13 days. It is now only 5 days, but it will be conducted the week before the election. So if election is next week, Wednesday, pre-polling will start Monday this week and finish on Friday, weather permits, or we could finish on Saturday. But it's not going to start 2 weeks before, just 1 week before. So in 2014, it was 2 weeks before.
Okay. You mentioned that the elections would be held between April and November. Could you explain why you're looking at these two?
Mm-hmm. So the Constitution states that the Parliament can be dissolved. The Prime Minister may advise His Excellency the President to dissolve Parliament after the expiry of 3 years and 6 months of the term under normal circumstances. And this is currently normal circumstances, so we anticipate that the Honourable Prime Minister may, at any time in his discretion, after the expiry of 3 years and 6 months, inform His Excellency the President to issue the writ.
And do you think Fijians have become more involved in terms of voting and registering to be part of the Fijian Elections Office?
Actually, this is the first time in Fiji's history where the Fijian Elections Office or an elections office in Fiji has actually survived through elections at the scale that we have. And this has been an opportunity for us actually to set up better standards, improve the processes, and generally raise awareness about elections. And one of the interesting things is that we are permitted to conduct small-scale elections like trade union elections or university elections. This has not been the case before. So once an election was over, it was closed shop, wait for the next one. Now with what has happened, we've been able to work on the previous election, the processes that were there. We've also been able to improve the information around elections. There's more capacity around elections now, I would say, compared to 2007, 2006, 2004. It's not only politicians now talking about elections, you hear the general electorate talking about elections. There is more coverage about elections in the daily news and newspapers now than you would say in 2005, which was also 1 year before the election.
Mhm.
What are some of the things that you're working on to try and empower people, to get them to want to vote? Are there programs that you're doing within communities? Is there something that the Fijian Elections Office is doing in terms of creating civic awareness?
So, when it comes to elections and an electoral management body like the FEO, we have to be very strategic in our awareness campaigns. This is very important because if we go in and create a lot of election awareness, say now, and the election happens later next year, then people will lose interest when it actually comes the time when they need to use that information. So we are banking on other types of awareness activities that we conduct to raise capacity in elections. And our social media pages are very active. We also conduct school time awareness. So every year we do registration in schools, and during that registration drive we conduct a 15-minute awareness session for all new voters. And this works a mile for us because we're registering them that day, they're getting their voter card, they're getting to know that they're now actually responsible citizens of the country. They can choose the next set of people that will govern the country, and this is important for us. And at the same time, it is useful for the voter, and that goes a long way to get your card and at the same time know your rights and responsibilities. So we start there. Then we are present in nearly all of the activities that go on in the country. You see Help for Homes awareness, Help for Homes initiative, the Fijian Elections Office was there, Hibiscus Festival, Bula Festival, all the festivals we try and go to, and we try and use the contestants of those elections, of those festivals, as a platform for us. The Hibiscus group has been working with us for the last 3-4 Hibiscus festivals, where they send us all the kings and queens from the festival to the FEO for us to run an awareness session with them. We do the same with other festivals as well, and this helps a lot in terms of boosting the civic awareness that a person has in terms of elections.
Thank you for that, Mr. Sneem. We'll go to a quick break now, and then we'll be back. You're watching For the Record. Welcome back. I believe you had a question, Rachana?
Yes, perhaps if you could elaborate on the total number of registered voters that we have for the 2018 general elections in comparison to last elections.
So I can only speak for the current data that we have, and this data is dating back to 26th of September. As at 26th of September 2017, we have 620,059 voters registered on our National Register of Voters. In 2014, we had 591,105 voters for that election. There are about 72,000 voters who are registered under pre-poll venues out of this 620,000, compared to some, I think, 65,000 from the last election. So there's been a slight increase. That's because we have increased a few places for pre-poll. However, it's interesting to see that in Fiji currently, the vast majority of the voters are still under the age of 40, and in terms of the age gap between 18 to 20, in terms of registered voters, we have about 24,000 voters, but 21 to 30 is 153,782 voters. So that's between 21 and 30, and 31 to 40 is 144,180 voters. So this is a majority. I would say about 40% or 45% of the voters are below the age of 40 in Fiji. So we have a very young population.
So youth hold the power, basically.
Yes.
In terms of voting.
Yes, youth participation is extremely important in our case because, as you see from the statistics, registration is voluntary, and if we have about 40% of the registered voters below the age of 40 and they're youths, they are quite interested already because they've registered. And now we all need to work together to get them all to come out and vote.
So what happens if these registered voters do not vote on the day of elections?
Yes, So 2014 we had a turnout of 84%. It's a very high turnout. If you look at turnout elsewhere, you're looking at somewhere around the range of 45 to 70%. I just came back from the Tongan election, and unofficial figures stated that the turnout was 39,000 voters out of 59,000 voters turned up to vote, and that's in Tonga. New Zealand also recorded. I think this is the highest turnout in New Zealand in the last election, but the turnout is somewhere around 70%, I think, for New Zealand also. So the rough turnout is around 75%. We are targeting 75%, but I'm sure Fijians will all turn up in numbers to vote, and we're definitely looking forward to a very high turnout in the next election also.
You spoke about a lot of procedures that the Fijian Elections Office put in place, and this sort of like decreased your time frame, especially in terms of counting and everything to do. One thing that interested me was, did you adopt some of these procedures, or were these sort of like things you learned from 2014 election?
Okay, so we use best practices as the baseline. If you look at our elections has a high amount of integrity in it. That is because we use best practices, things that have been tried and tested in other countries or recommended by observers who are made up of expert groups in other countries. We have adopted here. But adopted doesn't mean just cut and paste. We saw what the best practice was, we then localized it. It's very important that we use the word localized, because there are quite a few things that other countries do which may not be applicable in Fiji. I give you one example. In Australia, if you go to vote, they will ask you your name and where you stay. They don't need to see a photographic ID in Australia. In New Zealand, they will not get you to sign against your name when you go to vote. But in Fiji, we have a voter's card. We get you to sign against your name when you come to vote. This is because in Fiji, we want to make sure when you reconcile at the end of the counting, actually at the end of voting, when you reconcile, you are able to have information as well as evidence to reconcile. That's at every polling place. Not only in some places. Every polling place will have a voter list where you are allowed to vote if we are able to verify you. Now that doesn't mean you only have to have a voter card. You can come with any photographic ID. But essentially, we must make sure that when we reconcile, every person who's been marked on the list has been present and accounted for against every ballot paper that's in the box. And it's a voluntary voting system in Fiji. So if someone doesn't come to vote, there is no fine. However, we encourage everybody to vote. So there are best practices which are then customized for Fiji to give us the best possible credible election. And not just an election that we talk about, but an election that in effect, visibly and in its appearance, is credible, free and fair. And that's the way we have set up our processes.
The Fijian Elections Office had a recruitment drive earlier this year whereby you were supposed to recruit 17,000 election officers. And then they were supposed to undergo training. So was this achieved? Have you managed to recruit 17,000? And can you update us on the training process?
Actually, the 17,000 or so applicants, the staff that we are trying to recruit now, these are the people who will conduct the election. These are the people on the ground. They will be the ones who will be receiving voters, issuing ballots, counting them at the end of the day, and transmitting the results to their colleagues who will be entering the data. So these are a very important classic group of people for us. And we have been out recruiting. We managed to get about 13,000 applications in our first round of recruitment. And then straight after that, we started training. We've trained about 9,000 people. Our target for training was that we should finish training from last month, but the availability of the applicants is an issue. So we have had to extend our training, which does not affect our timelines at all. Election is next year, good time for us to train people. However, we have now identified the gaps in all the areas in Fiji where we were not able to recruit people. And the next round of recruitment starts next week. for those areas so that we can try and get people in those areas where we didn't have anybody as an applicant. And this is also a time for someone who missed out on the first recruitment drive to come in and put in an application so that we can recruit the staff in relevant areas.
Could you tell us some of the areas that you didn't manage to get enough recruits, so that our viewers can actually look at it and they know?
Some of the rural areas are of particular concern. I'd say Seanganga is an area where we have not been able to get as many staff as we needed. There are other areas which we will be making public, and I'm sure members of the public can then try and make efforts to apply for work in those areas.
We'll touch on that again shortly after this, but we'll go to a quick break and we'll be back. You're watching For the Record. Good evening and welcome back. Now, Mr. Sinim, you spoke about how you had difficulty recruiting in Seanganga. Why is that?
Well, I think in some rural areas there is a little bit of jittery feeling around going and applying for the job.
Oh, okay.
And we just have to overcome that. It's a very simple process. We ask you 20 questions, general knowledge questions, and you don't have to regurgitate a paragraph from a book. It's multiple choice questions. You will be telling us about yourself by putting it in the application form. And once you have completed the 20 questions, we will mark it and invite people for training. It's a very simple process. If someone is still hesitant about working on election day, the tasks are pretty simple. In fact, we've been able to summarize the tasks of each polling official in one sheet of paper. So it's not more than a sheet of paper. So if you just look at your task sheet, you will know what you have to do. And I encourage as many Fijians as possible to come in and apply for these positions. There is still opportunity, there is still room. The salary is also lucrative. A normal polling official earns up to $116 for working for us on one day. So it's a lucrative salary, but we need the best people to come in and work for us, because it's to determine the path for the nation.
Because that's the thing, before election officials compromised of civil servants, but the 2014 Electoral Act allowed citizens to start being part of the, the team, the election officials. So do you think that that's sort of reason why a lot of people are kind of hesitant, or maybe the people in Seanganga were kind of hesitant because they would think that they would require a certain skill set or degree level or something like that?
Actually, the move from civil servants run elections to, say, civilian run elections to ordinary citizens is actually very good. We're attempting to, through this process, increase ownership of the election. Okay. In the last election, 10,000 people worked on election day, and 10,000 people could certify that I did my task properly. I did my task properly. So, as you will see, there was no evidence of any irregularities submitted to us from 2014, despite so many people saying yes, 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 but no, there was nothing, because 10,000 people, 10,000 Fijians came in and worked on election day. And these 10,000 Fijians are honest, credible people, people who worked with us. And with that, when you allow this many people of the country, 10,000 people is about, say, 600,000 voters, that's about 1%. A good amount of people are now working on elections itself to certify. Now, civil servants are credible people as well. We're not discounting that fact. We're just saying that elections need to be seen as something that the people do for their country, and not something that they see civil servants come and do, and then they have no ownership, or they don't give that much regard to the process, because they say, okay, civil servants have come and done it and they've gone away. Elections needs to become something that everybody's involved in. And the way to do it is to actually involve people, and this is how people can get involved.
So what sort of basic skill sets is needed by these people?
As long as you can count, you can write, and you can calculate. We will give calculators, of course, in all the kits, but what I mean by calculation is that you should be able to count to say, okay, out of 50 ballot papers, we've given 49, so one should be left. Simple, basic mathematics. Also, we need people who are able to do basic calculations, as in arrange in ascending or descending order, count and add. So these are basic things, basic skills are required. A person with a degree can do this, a person without a degree can do this, a person who's only studied up to Form 3, Form 4 can do it. So as long as you are able to read, write and count, you are qualified for the election official position and you can come in and sit the test.
And civilians who have come and registered, what have the ages been like?
We have a high turnout of females actually, because and that is very encouraging. In 2014 we had 62% females. My director of operations, who's also female, says that's why we did a good job. I agree, but we're also expecting a turnout of a high number of females for our applications this time. And we're seeing a lot of younger people coming in to apply for these positions, a lot of university students. This is good for them. It's an exposure. It's also an income. But more so, I'm particularly concerned about the exposure. I know a few of them have said it's good money for us too.
So how many more elections officials are you looking at recruiting?
So essentially, to fill in the gaps, we may need around 1,000 or so people in these areas. And we have this week been doing recruitment of teachers. Teachers are our backup teams. Teachers are also people who we know who have transport or capacity to have transport. So these are our backup teams always. And in 2014 we had teachers as backup, and 2018 is the same plan. Teachers are, of course, we know they would be good at their mathematics and reading and writing. So we are trying to have teachers fill in for senior level positions mostly. However, depending on how much they score in the tests, teachers are then recruited. Everybody is recruited on merits. So if someone is not invited for a training, that means they did not do very well in the test and they're in the lower end of the scale. But the best way to do it is to find out by contacting our office.
So how many polling stations are you looking at for 2018?
As at our current figures, number stands at 2,149 polling stations.
It's a big number.
In comparison to the last elections, is this an increase or?
Yes, this is an increase. Last election, we had 2,028 polling places. This included the postal votes as well, because 500 postal votes were made to form one polling station. And there was about 16, I think, postal polling stations.
Okay, so what
Yes.
led to the increase in the number of polling stations?
So after 2014, we carried out a review of all the polling places. We redefined our policies into assigning polling places, and we went out in later 2015 to various parts of Fiji. Actually, we went all over the country, and we got GPS coordinates of all the polling places around the country. We did assessments, physical assessments of buildings, took measurements, took photographs, and then Winston happened. And post Winston, we again carried out a second round of assessment so that we are able to ascertain and lock down on venues. There are some very busy polling places, such as Tamavua Primary, 12 polling stations. We now need to increase that, so we are trying to see how we can split voters to other places in nearby locations. There are new settlements that have come up in the last 3 years. Tandirua housing subdivision is one of them. So this means there is more people in those areas now. Concentration is increased. So this means we have to establish polling places. So we have to react to the displacement of the population, or the placement of the population actually in various areas. And this is very critical for us. We don't want to put a situation where Fijians have to we are inconvenienced to find a polling place.
Thank you for that, Mr. Salim. We'll go to a quick break now and then we'll be back. You're watching For the Record. Good evening and welcome back. So how many political parties have registered for the 2018 general elections?
Currently we have 7 registered political parties.
7 registered
Yes.
parties.
There were, 6 of them are from the 2014 general election. We have had 1 new registration. So
What sort of requirement is there for any political party to register?
So for registration as a political party, a party must provide us with a copy of its constitution, addresses, office locations. There has to be some applicants, and registration has to be supported by up to 5,000 registered voters as members of the party. This is critical because of the one constituency that we have in Fiji, and political parties have to have members from all over the country, Central Division, Eastern Division, Northern Division, and Eastern Division. And this is to ensure that the party is national reach.
And what is FEO's views on commentary on like social media regarding FEO and the elections in general?
Mm-hmm. The Fijian Elections Office is an independent election management body. Our independence is guaranteed in the Electoral Act. The Supervisor of Elections is the head of the Fijian Elections Office, and the Constitution protects the independence of the Supervisor of Elections. Social media commentary is what we refer to as unofficial commentary, but we have been vigorously trying to ensure that information that we push out on social media is accurate, is informative, and as well as it is able to clarify any misconceptions that may arise. There are 2 types of people generally. One is where you go and tell that group of people that 1 + 1 = 2 and they agree. There is another group of people that you tell them 1 + 1 = 2 and they will never agree. So Fiji is made up of majority of the first group of people, and this is very healthy for us. We are able to communicate things with them. People actually understand. And those who have voted in 2014, if you ask them, the general reaction is, it was a good process. I got in 2 minutes, came out. Now, in 2018, we'd like to amplify that. We don't want to make too many promises at the moment, but we're working on simplifying a lot of processes so that it's easier for the voter. We have, to assist in terms of results, we are working currently, as I said, on an app so that a person is able to get the results in the palm of their hands. We're also working on a virtual tele room that's going to be on our website, so news media as well as generally any Fijian can get access results real time on our website. You see these kinds of things for New Zealand elections, the US elections, but Fiji will also have it, and we're currently testing it, and fingers crossed we are able to have this all ready and for the election.
Okay. What are your thoughts about going online with voting?
Electronic voting or online voting is something that has to be very carefully considered. There is a lot of things we have to think about, not only the capacities of the country in terms of handling such infrastructure, but also in terms of citizens' acceptance of this technology. We don't want to immediately rush into any electronic or online voting for general elections. This is because we would like voters to become familiar with the technology, but we haven't been too reluctant with it as well. Generally in Fiji now everybody has smartphones. I heard that there is a recent sale somewhere where smartphones are being sold for $89. So I'm assuming that the number of people in Fiji with smartphones is quite high. So what we did was we relied on a similar technology for trade union elections. We have partnered with AWEB, and we are now going to introduce Fiji to touch screen voting machines as a start for people to become conversant with electronic voting machines. But let me just reiterate, touch screen voting machines are only for trade union elections or university elections, not for general elections. So when you enter a polling place in 2018, you will find that there are 5 staff or 7 staff, and you will present you will enter the polling place, you'll get your voter instruction booklet like you did in 2014. Then you will proceed to verify your ID with the ID officer. You will sign against your name. You will be given a printed paper-based ballot paper, which you will then take to the voting screen. Now the voting screen is made of cardboard. It's a voting booth. You will mark your ballot paper, fold it, then you will go to the person who is going to ink your finger. Be careful not to have ink on your ballot paper. So hold the ballot paper on your right hand, get your left hand index finger of your left hand inked, drop your ballot paper in the ballot box, and you are done, and you can go home. There is no electronics.
You spoke about this recently with FBC News, and you spoke that you'll be using ballot papers and that voters will be comfortable in the polling stations. What do you mean by comfortable? We're more comfortable now than 2014.
Yes, you've been through it once.
Yeah.
The 2014 was a brand new electoral system, right? It was a brand new electoral system. It was a brand new design of a ballot paper. It was the first time voters did not have numbers and did not have names of candidates on a ballot paper itself. Whereas in 2006, 2001, 1999, you had names and on the ballot paper. You also had to choose from 282 candidates. So there was a bit of a greater surprise element to it. The other thing was the polling station design has been changed. So in 2006, voters would queue up for hours to get into this one polling place. And in 2014, only 500 people per polling place, so those who came very early, they might have had to wait for a while. Otherwise, if you went to vote at 11 a.m., you would have been in and out by 2 minutes, 3 minutes. So it's a new system, but it's the second time for this system now, so voters will be a bit more comfortable. We are not changing anything to maintain that. And we will be putting up demo polling places all over the country. Mr. Isake Sokawa, who works for us, he has very nicely done up a mock polling station, a 3D model. So when our awareness teams will be going out to do awareness sessions this time, they will be carrying this mock polling station, and they will be showing voters this is how things will operate inside. And we hope that voters become more comfortable, they walk in, vote, and they walk out, and they're happy.
Okay. So when can the people expect for the total number of candidates to be out?
That's after the nominations close. After nominations close, and nominations close 14 days after the writ is issued. So stay tuned.
Okay.
So FEO has opened some major tenders around the country, and how important are these to deliver for the general elections?
So one of the more critical tenders that we've put out is the tender for printing of ballot papers. In Fiji, our ballot papers are very secure. We put security features in the print itself. This is to ensure that there are no duplicate ballot papers or there are no forged ballot papers. And we have advertised the tender so that we can secure the company that will be printing it. And then with that company, we have to then do a very high level classified security feature discussion so that we are able to incorporate as many security features as possible. In 2014, we had 3 security features for the ballot paper. I cannot tell you that. We may use some of them again in 2018. But this is very critical for us. And it will allow the company to procure material that is required for such security features to be incorporated in the ballot paper in time and have it delivered in Fiji, and it's not a last minute rush. Yeah.
Thank you for that. We'll go to a quick break now, and then we'll be back. You're watching For the Record. Good evening and welcome back. I'll hand it over to Rachna. I believe you have a question.
Yes, so I think one of the things a lot of people are wondering is if they can still register for voting in 20 elections. So perhaps if you can elaborate on that, whether or not people can.
Certainly, registration is still open. It will remain open until the writ is issued. And there are more offices of the Fijian Elections Office now open all over the country. We anticipate to open about 3 more early January next year also. These are voter services centers so that voters can go and update their details. You can also apply for a replacement card or upgrade to voter card 2.0.
Okay. So what do they have to take in, what all do they need to take with them?
So if you are a new voter or you have not yet registered, we'll request that you bring your birth certificate as well as another photo ID, or alternatively another registered voter who is your next of kin can verify you, and we will register you. If you are already a registered voter, and you have lost your card, you just fill out our form and we can replace the card for you. Similarly, if you want to upgrade your card or update your details, you can fill out the form. We will, in most cases, we will not require anything extra unless we see two different people from the photo and the person in front of us. The registration process is very simple.
What are some of the milestones for the FEO for 2017? What would you say are some of the milestones for 2017? Yeah.
2017 has been a very, very good year for the Fijian Elections Office. We have managed to accomplish a lot of our milestones that we had set up in our 2015-2019 strategic plan. This year we managed to finally print and distribute the Fiji National Polling Venue Directories. It's historically the first publication of polling venues all over the country. We managed to also launch a very interactive, disability-friendly website, and it's still there are 3 websites actually that are available for information for elections in Fiji. We have opened some voter service centers, which was a trial project actually, but it's very productive for us. So we have expanded many more voter service centers. We have also printed the National Register of Voters and distributed it to political parties for their verification. And as of today, I can tell you there are 588 pre-poll venues for the next election and about 1,480 polling day venues. And this is information that in 2014 was not available 6 months before the election. So in terms of our preparations, we are a lot more prepared this time. We have 13,000 people who have applied to work for us on election day. This recruitment was started 2 months before the election in 2014. So in comparison to 2014 and 2018, we are preparing ourselves to be ready and on standby mode for the 2018 general election on the 1st of April. It's not saying that the election is early or election is late. As a best practice, we would like to be ready and on standby on the 1st of April. And once the date for the election is announced, we will then proceed to election time preparations.
Okay, I just want to thank you, Mr. Saneem, for coming on the show this evening and for taking time out to come and explain the process and achievements that the Fijian Election Office have done for 2017. And to my co-host for tonight on the panel, Raj Nalal, thank you for coming as well. That's all we have time for you this evening, rather. Join Nemani Ndela next with his My Say, and we hope that you enjoyed the show tonight. From the team and I, good night.